Got Your Eers On is brought to you by Tactical Legion 9. All right, everybody. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Got Your Eers On. Guido here along with Scoot.
Yo, yo, yo.
And Johnson.
It's a special bye-week guest edition, Guido.
Yes, special bye-week guest edition. You know, we like to bring on guests when we don't have games to talk about. So we're excited to have back from the smokingmusket.com at Nightstare on your Twitters, Jake Lantz, an all-around good guy. Jake, thanks for being back on the show. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, guys. Wearing my blue hat for you this time, not my yellow one.
Nice. I like that. That's
Guido,
good.
Guido, Jake is here,
I like the yellow
obviously. He's here, obviously, to talk about his preference for Chipotle over Qdoba and his abhorrence of all gold uniforms. I mean, I'm sure that's what he's here to talk about.
Absolutely. Because we've already done the climb, so we might as well talk about the food at the top of the hill, right? Is that what we're doing?
Exactly.
Listen, if Chipotle is at the top of this mountain, I don't want to go up anyway, so I'll just stay where I'm at.
Agreed.
So anyways, Jake, yeah, thanks for being on. Obviously, it's kind of a tough season for WVU. I think expectations were high, from a lot of people, especially fans. Expectations were high. Those expectations are not being met. And, Jake, I guess start with sort of an overall sort of how do you feel about this team and where we're at right now?
How do I feel about this team? I feel like we should be better. And I think the hardest part is that just like in previous years, you can make the argument that we are one play away. We are 2 plays away from being 4-1, right? And so that gives you hope. And hope in year 1, hope in year 2 is good. Hey, we're close, right? We clean this up and we'll be better. Hope in year 4, when that's all you have because there are no results to back up your hope, is tough. Coming into the season, you kind of looked at it and went 5-star QB, senior defensive line, junior, senior, sophomore, 129 plus starts on the offensive line. Junior, senior, 3-year starters at receivers. There's experience up and down the roster. Experience is supposed to equal wins in college football. When you have, that's what we saw in 2018. That's what we saw in 2016. That's what we saw in 2012 for the part. Experience is supposed to equal wins, and it's not. So it like most fans, it's frustrating. It's tough, because you kind of look at it and you go, they're so close. Catch the ball on 3rd down and moves it to 1st down. And now we're not having to punt and we're not giving the ball away. Be ready for whatever play coming out of the kickoff. Like, you should already know you're running an off tackle run. Why do we have to call a timeout again? Why are we not generating a pass rush? Just all of those things that are supposed to be questions in year 1 that are still here in year 4 are very tough. So it's tough. It's frustrating. It's not fun.
Yeah, we could tell after the Texas game from your post-game article that you wrote. You're a bit salty. There was a lot of non-climb-esque talking in your and I think Scoot was the one who said it last week. There was just screenshots of just bad plays in the article.
Right.
Here's a bad play. Take a look. I guess the question is okay, so like you said, everything was supposed to be there. The parts are supposed to be there. So the team.
But wait a minute, he had to deal with COVID.
But
wait a minute,
I know the excuses are there too. The excuses are there too. But the team,
Scoot transfer.
But wait a minute, but the transfer portal.
But the team is lost, right? So who's lost? I guess that's my question: is where's the team lost? Is Neil Brown lost the team? Is Jordan Leslie lost the defense? Where? I guess I'm trying to figure out where's the problem. I guess the buck always stops with Neil Brown, but where's the problem?
Yeah, the buck definitely stops with the coach, and to his credit, he has said that. Unfortunately, this year it's the defense, and the defense is not holding up their end of the bargain, especially with the players that they brought in, the players that they have, the defensive coordinator that they have. But in more so, I think the thing that has irritated me the most, and it really irritated me last year, and it has infuriated me this year, is the fact that you have heard at least twice this year, and you heard it at least 3 times last year. Well, they did something we hadn't seen on film before. And to me, that's a preparation thing. That is so what? Like when I played football and when I've coached kids, the very first thing you teach them is a base cover 2 on defense. Okay, the safeties go high, your corners go outside, your middle linebackers drop back. Okay, play base cover 2, or heck, play a base cover 3 if that's what you want to do. But like a team motions, or a team puts out an extra receiver, or pulls the tight end, or puts the guard out, whatever they do. And our guys are just like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. What are you doing? I don't know. Well, who's on first? I don't know. What's on second? And it's just one of those things where you're going, why are you not just calling an audible to a base defense, letting them pick up 3 yards, seeing what they did, coming back and saying, okay, we saw what they did out of this. This is how they're running it. Now we know, go to, man blitz 2 or whatever you're called.
Yeah, I agree, Jake. And don't you think that's what put such a sour taste in everyone's mouth here after Texas? Like, not so much. I mean, look, the score was bad enough, but we had 9 days to prep for that Texas game. And I think I didn't go in thinking we need to go in there and manhandle the Longhorns or something. I mean, Texas is good. As a general aside, though, isn't it funny that I haven't decided how good I think Texas is because of how much of a mess I think we and Oklahoma are? Isn't that kind of funny that I'm still not sure. But anyway, I think they're very good. And I think that I would have been like able to get my head around, hey, you got beat up a little bit and you lost to Texas, but there were parts of that game that it just felt like we were completely discombobulated and just didn't look ready to go down there and play a football game. I think that's what made me so sour after this Texas loss.
Yeah. I wasn't sure, and I still am not sure watching it, if that reminded me more of 2018, where you just kind of, or 2018 Iowa State, or 2021 Baylor. In both games we lost. In both games I feel like we kind of knew early. I felt like in 2018, hey, like, okay, maybe we can, stop stepping on ourselves, stop stepping on the rake, stop slipping on the banana peel in the second half, make some adjustments, keep it close, and, we'll eke out of this thing 31-30 with the last second field goal, and it'll just be the weird things happen. Last year against Baylor, that the team quit, and I hate using that language and that word, but the team quit.
Well, it sure felt like that, yeah.
And it did. It really felt like, I felt like after that second touchdown, okay, we're probably not going to win this game, but maybe we can just kind of hold ourselves together. But like, it felt like the team just kind of, let's get out of this.
Yeah.
And last week against Texas is almost a microcosm of the Neil Brown era, in the aspect of, you look at it and you go, we lost 38-20. They won the second half. They scored touchdowns on 2 of their 3 possessions, and they won the second half and all this. But I think it was pretty obvious watching that game that we were choosing to get out of that game and end it as quick as we can. We scored back-to-back touchdowns, but it took 14 and 10 plays, and it took 15 minutes. We were running the ball and doing everything we could to basically just shorten the game and go home. So, it's not so much that you won the game as much as Texas allowed you to just, hey, I don't care if it takes you 20 plays to go down here and score a touchdown. You're not going to beat us, and a win's a win's a win for us.
Yeah, I agree. So talking back on this defensive discussion, we were talking last week on the show. One of the worries, I think, now as you look ahead to these remaining conference games on defense, it's kind of like you start to get that feeling of these are the guys. Like you don't suddenly improve this product on the field by snapping your fingers. Like these are your guys. This is who you have. So I think we were talking last week, you start to get concerned like, everyone's going to watch these games. Everybody's going to watch this backup quarterback at Texas look like, Joe Namath now after a week. And I would fully expect now teams moving forward to come out and attack us in that fashion. Do you think there's anything you do, I don't know, scheme wise that saves you a little bit? I think Guido pointed out maybe a couple shows ago that we thought we could maybe scoot by generating enough pass rush to help out this defensive secondary by just generating enough noise up front to kind of give those guys a breather. We haven't really seen that in one or two games now, of generating a rush. So I start
Grant
to worry.
Wells wasn't knocked around at all by us.
Right. You're right.
He had time to do whatever.
Yeah, he really did.
Yeah, and when you talk about the defense, and especially when you talk about it this year, I think the lack of a pass rush is the biggest single factor on everything. Yes, you can point to the fact that the secondary is bad, and we have transfers and they're not doing that stuff. But if you want, honestly, the single biggest way to improve anything is to generate pressure. It just is. If you force a QB to make a throw before he wants to make it, to move his feet and get off a spot before he wants to throw it, or to have to throw continuously with someone in his face, bad things generally happen for the offense. It is the single best way. There is no way the Giants win 2 Super Bowls if they are not generating a pass rush from Tom Brady daily, right? That's just the way it works. And so I don't understand why we continue to only rush 3 or 4 and think that these quarterbacks are not capable of finding an open receiver and picking us apart and hitting plays. So if I were Jordan Leslie, or if I were the defensive coordinator of the Mountaineers, I'd be sending pressure. I would be sending Koba on, inside and outside blitzes. I would probably move some people around who are better blitzers, and I would be sending 5, 6 every single play. We're going to play man, we're going to press, and we're going to blitz like heck, and we're going to force you to throw early and quick. And we're not going to, you're not going to get 9 seconds, and you're not going to be able to throw the ball 10 yards down the field. You are going to have to throw it short, quick, and fast, because we're coming hard.
Ultimately, this team feels like it feels like it's a reflection of its coaches, right? I mean, I think we're seeing some of their personality, and I don't know Jordan Leslie personally, but I don't know. He doesn't come across as a fiery guy, whereas we've had guys that are fiery in the past.
So Scoot, yeah, I would agree. I feel like the overall staff is that way. The overall staff is we're not going to get too high. We're not going to get too low. Everything stays even keeled. And if it were working, that would be fine, but it's not working. And so it's a problem. And I think, overall, that's probably the truth of everything with this staff and this team, is that you can't just say any one thing does or doesn't work, because obviously if they called the plays and they work, we're all happy, but they're calling plays and they're not working and they're not happy. So whatever they're doing is not working. I have noticed, I've read it on other places, I've noticed it when I've watched the games, that there isn't an energy on the sidelines. When Rich Rod was here and they scored, that sideline was going crazy. There are videos when Stewart was here, and those guys would score and they're chest bumping and everything else. And obviously when Dana was here, he's running up and down the sidelines, fist bumping and everything else. And now it just kind of seems like we scored, cool, great, good job, thanks. Like you're 20 years old, man. You just scored a touchdown in college football. Go yell, scream, and have some fun. And it seems like that is missing from the top down. There's no fun, there's no excitement. It's very business. Put your mind, professional. Put your head down, do your job, and everything. And unfortunately, it's just it's not translating on the field. You're not seeing a business-like approach where we can go out, score points, grind teams out, and win. And we're the methodical. We don't make mistakes. We're Iceman in Top Gun, right? We're just going to be sound and professional, and you're going to make a mistake at some point. Well, that's not us. That's the complete opposite of us.
Well, that's a great point. I actually hadn't thought about that. Scoot, what happened? So, like, we had the Juice Squad, right?
The juice is
Like the juice
squeezed.
is not
The juice
loose
has been
anymore.
squeezed, I guess. There's no more juice left or something. I don't know. It is frustrating for me. I am Jake, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but I am like, so if there was a climb, I never even like put the harness on. I was always like maybe kind of like, I don't know.
You left your carabiners off.
I'm actually back at the airport, ready to go back to my home. Like I was like, listen, I'm not staying. And part of it for me is, and I think maybe reading some of your articles and seeing some of your conversations on Twitter, like I think I don't know. I feel like I know what my eyes see, but I keep being told that my eyes aren't seeing what my eyes see. And that's really frustrating to me because it comes across like I'm an idiot, which I don't need anybody else to confirm that, but it comes across like I'm an idiot and you know way more than I do.
Well, but you're saying you're being told from the coaching staff is what you're saying.
Right. And it's frustrating to me to see what we see. And then like, I think you could look at, I don't know, Neil Brown's had close to 45 post-game press conferences. And I think they all sound exactly the same. Win or loss, they're all the exact same thing. The only thing that's sometimes different is he will find some ridiculous thing that had no impact on the game, but he'll complain about a targeting call or some sort of catch or no catch thing that had no real, like, didn't really determine the outcome of the game, but he's going to get fired up about that because it's an officials problem. It's not a coaching or a preparation problem. It's the officials somehow cheated us somewhere along the line. So that's frustrating to me.
Yeah, it's, I thought up 2 years ago, I thought 19 and 20, I thought his press conferences were good. They were informational. They're kind of bland, which matches his personality a bit, but more so, he wasn't going to say anything controversial. There's a lot of coach speak, all that kind of stuff. You started noticing last year, and I think it really started coming out with the whole Garrett Green issue of, well, he needs to make better reads and he needs to do this. And everyone's going, why in the world does he need to make better reads when your starting quarterback almost gave away the Virginia Tech game? And if your tight end had made a down block like he was supposed to, your running quarterback would have run for 75 yards and would have sealed the game. And then all of a sudden he goes 68 yards against TCU and you pull him and you never play him again.
Right.
And he needs to make better reads. So at that point you started going kind of like you said, my eyes are seeing one thing and you're telling me another. And then you start hearing guys need to practice better before they play. Well, the guys on the field aren't making plays, like what do these guys have to do in practice? So I start, so last year you started kind of seeing like I don't know if I can believe you as much. And this year, the video kind of, I think, really killed any hope or belief I had, because you come out and you more or less beg the fans to, hey, don't give up on us. We're going to do this right.
Yeah.
And
oh yeah, this was the post backyard
hostage video.
The hostage video.
The ISIS,
exactly.
The Neil Brown ISIS video.
Yeah, and the only thing missing was the gun to the head thing.
Right.
That was so awkward. Yes.
And then, I felt like after the Kansas game, his press conference that Tuesday, I thought he did a really good job. I thought it sounded a little more personal. It felt real. Like, you kind of come away with this impression, if you just listen to it, at any one time, like he knows what he's talking about. He talks about how the guys need to block here. And if they had taken this step and they had done this, things wouldn't have happened. And you go, okay, well, the guy seems to know his X's and O's. He seems to be very technical. He seems to have a good idea. But then you kind of go, well, if you know that, why do your players not know that, especially after 4 years? Why do they continue to make the same mistakes? Why do they continue to be out of position? So you seem to know the stuff, but you can't teach it. And so that's a problem. And then, like you said, oh, the excuse here, well, the guys didn't do this, and I don't know what targeting is anymore. And I do. And I can tell you every time I watch those plays, I go, yeah, that was targeting. No, that's probably not targeting. No, yeah, that probably wasn't a catch, but they didn't have a great angle. And so this is what it was called on the field. And so that's going to be ruled a catch. Guess what? This one, they had a whole lot better angle. I can see the ball on the ground. It's not going to be a catch. I don't need anyone else to tell me that. I've gotten most of those replays right because you kind of go, there it is, right there. The ball's on the ground. It's moving. That's not going to be a catch. Come back. Not, call on the field was ruled a catch. The ball hit the ground, 2nd and 10. And you go, well, I don't know what a catch is. He just told you the ball was on the ground. Like, so right. I think there's more and more of my eyes aren't lying to me. And when I see it 10, 11, 12, 13 times, if you're telling me the opposite of that, but I keep seeing it, why should I believe you?
Well, and I think the other thing, Jake, that for me is the exodus of players especially after last season. And what I haven't been able to reconcile is there was a lot of defensive secondary guys, right? And that's where we've had a lot of pain this year. Is that a problem that is a Neil Brown problem? Is that a Jordan Leslie problem? Like, why did those players, is it a Shadon Brown problem? Like, why did those players leave and put us kind of in the situation that, not that's an excuse, but did they put us in the situation that we're in? Like, if we still had some of those guys, would we be talking today about the problems that we're having?
I think the short answer is no. I think if you had Daryl Porter and Tyke Smith and Jackie Matthews and, Josh Chandler-Samito, that you're probably not in Akeem Messidor. This defense is probably a whole lot better. I come from the standpoints of a single player, no, is not a coach's issue, right? Players get homesick, they don't fit the program, whatever. Mass exodus are. There's just something that is rotten in Morgantown. There is no reason that multiple starters transfer from a team if there isn't some sort of issue. People will say we can't make a coaching change because players will transfer. And the argument is always they're already transferring. How much more can they transfer?
Right.
You see transfers with a coaching change. It happens, right? Guys commit to a school, but they commit to a coach because their skill set fits whatever that coach does. The new coach wants taller, leaner, longer, faster, bigger, whatever. And they don't fit, so they need to go find a new home. And a lot of times they follow the coach or they go to a similar type coach. But that happens in the first year. Maybe you see a little bit in the second year, guys who are on the fence stay and then give you a year, find out I don't like your style, I don't like your program, or it's not going to fit. I've got one more year. I need to go do what's best for me. You don't see it 3, 4, 5 years down the road. You don't see that many, right? Yeah. You might. Dana had guys who would transfer who broke team rules or weren't getting playing time, and no one questioned those. No one said the receiver who was 6th in the depth chart, who only saw time against Towson, and never got on the field any other time. No one blamed or said that was a coach's problem or a player's problem. He's a guy who recognized the issue and is going to either transfer down to D2 or somewhere else so he can get playing time. That stuff happens all the time. We're all okay with that. Starters don't transfer unless there's something that's the matter. And whether it's Jordan Leslie, whether it's Shadon Brown, it ultimately falls on the coach, because if it is one of those, if it is the defensive coordinator, if it is the defensive backs coach, if it is the defensive line coach, and you're losing guys who are difference makers, perhaps you need to find a new coach. Perhaps you need to find a new defensive line coach, because if they're running players off that are making plays, you got a problem.
Yeah, that's a good segue, I think. I think that's a good segue.
Do you feel that Neil Brown maybe has a loyalty issue?
I'm sure he does. And, it makes sense for him because these are guys that he won with at Troy, right? He's going, I've won 10 games. I was 31-9 or whatever he was, in those 3 years before he got hired. So it makes sense. And I'm sure they're good coaches. I'm sure that they know the technical aspect of coaching. It's not like they hired me or someone else off the street who's never been a coach before and said, come teach these 22-year-old college kids how how to defend a 300-pound lineman, swim technique or whatever. But I think we can all recognize that there are tiers and levels of talent, and some guys may be a good G5 coach or maybe good at one area and it doesn't translate to another. From where I'm an engineer, and I've worked in places where this guy was really good in this market and this sector, and when he tried to come over and talk to another architect or another engineer or something, they just didn't mesh. And so you kind of had to pull him away and say, you kind of stay in your lane and stay in your crowd and don't come over here. And that might be the issue, is that they're not able to connect to these, Northeast football players. Without looking, I don't know where some of their backgrounds are, but if they're from the Southeast and they're used to a certain type of football player and relate to them a certain way, they may not be able to relate to these Northeast guys or whatever it is, but they're not getting it done. There's too many issues, and you can't, ultimately it's going to cost him his job. It is going to cost Neil Brown his job if he's unwilling to make changes at his secondary coaching level. If he's not willing to get rid of some of these coaches, you could see it ultimately costing him the ability to coach the Mountaineers.
Well, and we had said on last week's show too, Jake, that's like,
yeah, we were debating that. Yeah.
Like, does Neil Brown sacrifice, for lack of a better term, Jordan Leslie right now in the middle of the season to try to better his position when it comes to the end of the season? Like, at some point, I would think as a head coach, you've got to try to position yourself too. And I don't know if he's thinking about that part of it either.
Well, and we debated that too, because we likened it to bringing Graham Harrell in on the offensive side after getting some heat on, offensive play calling and offensive performance. I think people, even before Graham Harrell, now he had his own.
I don't know where that heat's coming from. Deggy was prolific.
Diggy was prolific.
Well, I think people, even before, JT Daniels and Graham Harrell's system and everything got going here this season, a lot of people were kind of giving Coach Brown credit. And I think I did too. Like, okay, look, he's making an effort, taking some action here to address what he's getting some criticism on and what is recognized as a pain point. I think we were debating last week, don't you think it would behoove him to do the same here on the defensive side? And we never really came to an agreement on whether we thought that would happen or not. I'm not sure it does.
I don't think it does. Typically when you see this, you've got a guy who has either won and is sliding down and now needs to save his job, by showing the change, or you've got a new guy and this is his first time. And I don't really think Neil falls into either category, because I think 4 years is a little too late in the process. You kind of saw with Dana, and I apologize to people to continually bring him up, but he was the last coach, so he's the most recent. But, he had Joe DeForest, and that didn't work, and he got...
there's a name. Oh, my gosh, there's a name.
And then he had Keith Patterson, and he was better, but he still wasn't working. And I would probably argue that the Patterson thing was more youth than talent. I think if Patterson had stayed another year, he probably has similar success to Gibson. I don't know that he, beats Baylor in 2014, but I think you could probably see, similar success, because Gibson got the benefit of having juniors and seniors on his defense where the other guys didn't. So, but Dana, to his credit, Joe E. Forrest, because we'd never played D with him. He sacked him after 1 year and he was moved to special teams. Keith Patterson, same thing, didn't work. You're gone, right? He immediately and quickly recognized there was an issue and we moved. And Neil is now in his fourth year. So it's not first or second year trying to, hey, look, I'm trying to find the right thing. I'm trying to find the right fit. And ultimately, I think if he were to sack Jordan Leslie today and name somebody the defensive coordinator.
That's the concern, is who would it be?
Right.
You look at the rest of that coaching staff, you're like, could we go with the secondary coach? Probably shouldn't do that. Should we look at, I don't know where you go. So that's a good question.
And so if you sack Jordan Leslie and it doesn't work, I think it cost him his job anyway. I came into the season saying we needed to win 7 games. I came into the season saying that at a minimum, we need to win. We need to be 7-5 going into a bowl. And I can forgive you if you lose a bowl, if you go 7-5, but at least you finally prove that we're a little bit better than what we were. And I remember talking and asking and trying to find out, we have a 5-star quarterback and we have all of this experience and talent returning. Why is why is even my expectation 7 wins? Like, why is that not 8,
Yeah,
9,
that's fair.
10,
Right.
10 wins?
Right.
And, some of it was there's still inexperience and there's the strength of schedule and whatever the excuses and the reasons were. And, I never really got a good feeling or answer as to why 7 wins was acceptable, but it was acceptable, right? And I think we can all argue it probably more was the fact that we had never reached 7 wins. So you can just reach 7 wins, we'd all be happy at this point. But you come in and you say 7 wins, and I mean, I seriously doubt we're getting to 7 wins. And so even if you were to fire the defensive coordinator and he goes 5-7, I don't think it's enough. I just, at this point, it's all a referendum on him. It's all on his head. And, whatever changes you make need to quickly turn the ship around and right it. And they have to be the right ones. And I think there's just not enough time anymore. Like, at this point, you're using a spoon to get the water out of the ship, and it's just not enough.
7 wins would require you to win 3 in a row.
Yes, and we've yet to do that 40 games in.
Well, and so Guido, that kind of brings us back to where we were last week, because Jake's right. Now each weekend, each Mountaineer game day weekend feels like a referendum on the head coach. And we were debating last week, what we had chosen 5-7. Scoot went 4-8 at the beginning of the season when we were trying to suss out where we thought the team would land. And we thought at the time, even if that happened, at least I recall us saying, I'm not really sure that costs him his job because of things that are locked in place and, the famous extension that's out there. And so we've been debating, and I don't know. That's what I was going to ask Jake too. I feel like, to me, it's still up in the air. If you limp this to 6-6 or even 5-7, like how we were kind of talking last week, how bad does it have to go before something is done? Because I don't think it's our nature. Just as WVU, I don't think it's our nature. If he limps this to 6-6, maybe even 5-7, I'm not sure that there's any change made.
Well, and even from the standpoint of the college, like WVU's been pretty tight-lipped about what their feelings are about the situation right now. And, there have been some press releases from Shane Lyons that have been, we're monitoring the situation kind of top, way of putting it.
Yes.
But yeah, it doesn't. I mean, I don't know where this college would be on this. There's part of me that truthfully believes, Jake. There's part of me that believes we finish with 3 wins this season. They might bring him back next season to coach again. I really believe that might happen.
I read some stuff, and I myself have been trying to figure that out. Where's that this is unacceptable line, right? Where's the you fell off the cliff? And I've heard that 5-7 they might bring him back, and it's well, you didn't quite get it done, and whatever the reasons are. And I myself would say if you finish below 6-6, you're done. I mean, personally, I'm probably done right now. But to be, don't fire him midseason because I don't know that it changes anything and whatever. So, but I think you have to be a bowl team. West Virginia is the 14th winningest, football program in Division I, and we're talking about being under 500 3 out of 4 years, and that's acceptable, and we're going to allow that? That just can't happen.
That drives me insane because I think the apologists say, well, he's had a lot of uphill battles, and it's hard to recruit to West Virginia.
Hasn't been for 40 years.
I'm tired of hearing all of that stuff. Enough is enough. Stop. I said what was my saying, Johnson?
What was your saying, Scoot? It was t-shirt worthy.
Instead of getting what you deserve, you should deserve what you should get. Something about getting and deserving things.
It was great.
Yes.
He
It
can't
was
remember, but it was
amazing.
great.
It
It
did
was-
have a lot of getting and deserving. I
There
think
was some.
did.
There was
I
some.
think your point. I think your point being like West Virginians deserve better. Stop settling for this second.
Stop selling yourself short.
Yeah.
Like enough with, well, we're just West Virginia. Like you're a Power 5 school. Like other Power 5. Kansas State expects things from their head coach. Why shouldn't we?
Yep.
You always go after Kansas State. You
Well,
always go
'cause,
after Kansas State.
It's Kansas.
And that was the reason why we wanted everybody was like, oh, we got to get rid of Bill Stewart because he's not a real head coach and we need a real head coach. And look where we're at now. Like, we've got a guy who
Throws good
Bill
pool
Stewart
parties.
had a better winning record than Neil Brown did.
Plays hillbilly
yeah.
golf with the fellas.
He's got, like you said, he's got a good cannonball into his pool.
He does.
I think Jake, is the $20 million buyout? Is that what stops WVU? Is it a money thing? Is it what stops them from doing it at this point?
I think they don't want to admit it, but I'm sure that it does. So let's talk about the buyout real quick before we get into it. So, if you talk to me about the buyout on Twitter, I will ad nauseum talk about this, and I apologize if you followed me and you know what I'm about to say. But so the buyout is nothing more than just salary payments. He is owed $20 million from now through January 26 or through December 2026. And his buyout is nothing more than, this is what we owe you. You signed a contract. We're willing to honor it. You're going to get this money. And so every single 2 weeks or whatever his pay schedule is, the buyout goes down because, it works out to something like $9,900 a day. So every day it drops by $9,900.
It's not a bad gig.
No, so
No.
So and if they chose to fire him today, he's owed something like $17.5 million, roughly talking. And so he's going to get that money. Like it's fully guaranteed to him. But it's paid to him over the life of the contract. So he's getting that as a salary payment. He's getting $9,900 a day, as a salary payment. It's not owed. He's not owed $17.5 million today. He's not owed it in 30 days. It's just a payment. It's just whatever they've already committed to. If he goes and takes another job, then whatever he's owed is less salary. So say he goes back to, just talking purposes, he goes back to Troy and signs a $4 million deal. So now that 17 becomes 13, right? So if he wants that money up front, if he says, you know what, you fired me, you hurt my family, you hurt my feelings, my family is deserved more, whatever the reasons are, and he wants that money up front, he is going to negotiate some sort of reduced settlement. He's going to call JG Wentworth and go get a reduced settlement here. And if it's 75%, just pulling the number out of the air, if it's 75%, then he gets a buyout of $12 million. So I'm sure there's just I think it's more the optics than it is the numbers. I'm sure that they have the money in the coffers. I'm sure that they have the ability to go, jingle some purses and find the money. I think there is a part of, well, if we do that, who are we beholden to? If I go ask somebody for $12 million, they want something in return. Maybe they want to pick the next coach. Maybe they want their name on something. Maybe they want a guarantee on where their money goes, whatever. So I think there's some of that. I think it's more of egg on the face. They don't want to admit a mistake. To his credit, Neil Brown checks. If there are a lot of boxes a head coach needs to check, and he checks a ton of them. He unfortunately is not checking the single one, the single big box that says win. Right.
Yes.
Right.
He he's a very
well.
good ambassador for the university. He does. You're right. He does those things.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, we just need you to win a few games while you're doing those other things. Yes.
Yeah. And I think there is at least some belief that if we just give him a little bit more time, he can figure this out. Because to the credit, he's not far off. But we haven't been far off for 4 years. And, I think what's hurting him and what is starting to come around is that it doesn't take 4 years to turn a program around. It didn't take Lance Leopold 4 years to turn Kansas around. It didn't take Sonny Dykes 4 years to turn TCU around. Steve Sarkisian has Texas, up and down the roster. There are coaches who are winning in their first, second, or third year, and we continue to hear the same mistakes, the same, excuses, the same reasons as to why it doesn't apply at West Virginia, and it doesn't fly anymore. You just can't say, hey, well, he had COVID, or the first excuse was, well, he didn't recruit. It wasn't his players in 2019. He came in late.
Right.
Hey, guess
Cubbert
what?
was there. Yeah. Cubbert was
every
there.
coach that came in 2019 had the same issue. And, the cupboard was I've always argued the cupboard is inexperienced. It wasn't bare. It was young, but a bare cupboard to me is 50 players, and, you're trying to figure out how to make a two deep, and that wasn't the case. He had a full roster. He just had a very young roster, and that's fine. Play them all, do whatever, no red shirts, everyone gets experience. And then, oh, well, he had to deal with COVID. Hey, guess what? Everyone had to deal with COVID. And honestly, that was one I think he mismanaged. I would have played every single player, every single game. I wouldn't have cared about the record. I would have done what I could to get as many players playing, for the simple fact that they came out and said, hey, this isn't going to be used against you. So guess what? Everyone's going to play. Everyone's going to get experience. We're going to come into 2021 with 100% returning production, because guess what? Every single person on this roster, saw time. And then it became, well, that hurt recruiting. Well, it didn't hurt at other places. Like, every excuse you hear is not singly a reason for West Virginia. It's not like West Virginia existed in this 2019, 2020 COVID bubble.
Right.
No one else did. Everyone else had the same issues, and other people found ways to do it.
We're not operating in a vacuum. Yes, everyone's dealing.
I don't know the answer to this question. I'm going to ask a question I don't know the answer to. That's just, I should never do. Who was the last WVU coach to be fired? I mean, I guess you could argue Bill Stewart, but he really wasn't, right? He wasn't officially fired. He stepped down, and that was like, who was the last WVU? When was the last time WVU let a coach go? Like, literally, we cease your contract, because Dana wasn't fired. That was just, we're not renewing your contract. Stu, we just talked about. Rich Rod. Then you're all the way back to Nealon. I mean, Bobby Bowden?
No, Bowden went to
he left?
Florida. He chose to leave, yeah. I want to say it's probably Signetti.
It's probably Signetti.
Yeah, Frank Signetti.
I'm going to look really quick, too.
That's 40 years you're talking about? We haven't fired a coach.
Yeah.
That's this is where Scoot goes, with this stuff. Is it's WVU. It's West Virginia. Let's just talk about,
Yeah, he
West
was
Virginia
fired,
people.
Guido. He was fired
so
after
Frank
the
Signetti was
79 season. Yeah.
And what was his record?
He was 17-27 as WVU's coach.
And what's Neil's? 19 and 22?
19 and 21.
21.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So Neil's going to lose a couple more games before he gets fired. It's going to be close.
How many wins did Frank Signetti have against winning teams? That's a question.
I don't know.
Because I know what Neil's got.
I wonder how many times he won 3 in a row, though.
Yeah, did he win 3 in a row?
I don't know. I'm gonna look.
Honestly, it may not have even been Signetti, because he was diagnosed with cancer, and I don't know if that was a mutual parting or health reasons or whatever.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
It has certainly been a while. Stewart's probably the most accurate, because he was supposed to be coach in waiting, which was you get one more year before you're fired, and then he did some dirty stuff, and that was an unceremonious parting. But yeah, West Virginia doesn't typically fire coaches. They certainly don't fire coaches mid-season. They're not hasty in their decisions. So I think there's a lot of that going on. And I think there's a lot of, we don't want to admit we made a mistake. We want to give this guy one more chance. We're if we can just turn the corner, it'll be fine. My big fear, and this started last year, and I think it's built to a point this year that it is not going to go away, is unless this team rattles off 6 or 7 wins, and gets to 7-5, that you come back next year with a coach who's under 500 4 years into his tenure, who's never won 3 in a row, who continues to make mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake that I'm not excited about next year. Like, if we come back if we bring this guy back at 5-7, do I really want to sit through this again when our first game is Penn State and then we play Pitt and potentially we get to see Dana come to Morgantown, and Dana's going to be licking his chops looking to put 75 on us.
Oh yeah,
do I really want to go through that as a fan? Do I really want to sit here and support somebody who just isn't getting it done?
At what point does that really affect recruiting, right? I mean, I would think recruits are going to be like, listen, I was looking for progress as well, and I'm not seeing it. And I think that's going to be a big time recruiting tool for other schools. Like, listen, you want to go to this place with this guy? He hasn't won 3 in a row.
Yeah, I agree, Scoot. And Jake, too, from the money perspective, you're paying him a lot of money right now. Like, for all the people that are like, hey, you can't fire him, you got to pay him a lot of money. Well, you're paying him a lot of money right now. And this is the value for money that you're getting. So I think, to me, that's the argument I don't understand. Like, you're currently paying him a lot of money. So
yeah, and that's kind of been my stance. I was discussing it with someone on Twitter who said, if you fire him, you have the buyout and you have to pay this money. And my argument was, you got to pay him anyway. Do I really want to pay a guy for non-results? Paying this guy is the literal definition of doing nothing, right?
Right.
You're paying this guy and you know what you're going to get, and it should not be enough. So just the money shouldn't be an issue. It should never be an issue. And if it is an issue, that is a different conversation that needs to be had by people much smarter in higher places than me.
Yeah.
And so it's one that I've never really considered. It's one of those where if we truly gave a guy a contract that we couldn't the very next day say, you know what, we changed our minds, goodbye, that's a really bad look.
Yeah. Yep. And that's on us then. I mean, then that's our fault. And Scoot, Frank Signetti won 4 in a row in 1979. So there you go.
Well,
if you were wondering,
this just keeps proving my thought correct.
The next thing you got to find out, Johnson, for next week's show is who was the last coach to not win 3 in a row in WVU. Jake, so what? 7 games left. I know you're not a fortune teller. You can't see the future.
I did last year.
And listen, Scoot will tell you how great he is too. How does this end for WVU? Where do we finish?
I right now I'm saying 4-8. I think the bigger issue right now is I thought last year you could fix the offense, that it's easier to fix the offense than the defense. We still have to play Texas Tech, who's a top 20 passing offense. We still have to play TCU, who's a top 20 passing offense. We still have to play Oklahoma State, who's a top 20 passing offense. There are just way too many good quarterbacks and good offenses in the Big 12 that I don't see the secondary improving. I don't see the current offense being capable of scoring every time they go out. And so I think 4-8 is out there. Who they beat, I can't tell you because right now we're not favored in any game. And, I can't foresee that we're going to play Iowa State and that's going to be the game that Iowa State just absolutely refuses to get out of their own way like Virginia Tech did. Or, this is the year that we beat Oklahoma, because I think you can make an easy argument that any team left on our schedule is capable of beating us. Yeah. I think we are capable of scoring points on any team, but I fear that you've got the issue of the first time we don't score an offense, that is a score for the other team.
Yeah.
And so, great, we scored on 7 of 10 possessions and the other team scored on all 10.
The Ollie meter.
We've been talking about
it's
it.
The Ollie meter.
The Ollie meter.
We've been talking about the Ollie meter. Yeah. Every time we see Ollie out there punting, then that's a move in the wrong direction for sure.
Last week we had the Ollie meter set at 3.5. We said if more than 3.5 punts, WVU doesn't have a chance.
Well, and Guido, didn't we go screaming past our Ollie meter over under by halftime?
I think first half.
That felt bad. That felt really bad.
I mean, I think the Ollie meter this week. I mean, I'll set it. I'll set it at 2.5 this week against Baylor. Like, I think that's like you can't have him out there all the time punting. You get if you're not putting points up, even if it's 3 points, you got to put points up.
I do want to talk about this Baylor game, though.
Okay.
I want to get everyone's prognostication because I think it's interesting. I'm going to be controversial.
Oh, geez.
Because we were talking about it before we got on the show. The spread came out, started at 2.5 and went to 3.5 in favor of Baylor, which I thought was surprising.
Weird.
Yeah. And the over-under's 54.5 on it. I guess I assumed Baylor was going to come out at least a touchdown favorite in this game. And seeing it at 3.5, I was kind of surprised, Johnson.
Yeah, I definitely was. But then, I think we should do what we normally do here, Guido. We should each give our predictions for this upcoming game, include Jake's, and then we can kind of look back and see how wrong I was, because I already feel like I'm going to be controversial and wrong. But I guess I'll go first since I'm the one bringing it up. I think this Baylor game. So when we did our preseason picks, I immediately was like, Baylor loss. I mean, I just went I just slid that right over in the loss column. The interesting thing about these Baylor Bears is that I know they were ranked. I can't remember off the top of my head if they're still in the rankings right now. I think they fell out. They lost a decent game to Oklahoma State last time out. I think Oklahoma State's a little better than even people think, to be honest. But I think Baylor is not setting the world on fire from an offensive standpoint. And I think it's a night game in Morgantown. I think weird stuff could happen. And I'm actually going to pick, Scoot, you're not going to like this. I'm actually going to say the Mountaineers steal a win against Baylor in this upcoming game. I'm going to say 24-21 WVU.
Wow. Scoot, I'll let you go. What's your opinion on this game?
My opinion is, what did Bart Scott say about they couldn't stop a nosebleed? Something like that. I think we're going to lose. I picked this as a loss. And I think sometimes I'll go back to my old adage. Sometimes the matchups just aren't great. Like you see it more so in basketball than you do football, but in football, Oklahoma State, we can't seem to beat them for anything. So I also feel like we struggle at times with Baylor. We did last year. I'm going to go. I think Baylor scores 42, and we score 24.
You think Baylor's putting up 42?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. And I'm gonna take Scoot and double down on it. Here's the thing, boy. Johnson.
Okay.
I appreciate this is gonna. I mean, if it goes your way, Johnson, you'll look like a hero.
And you guys aren't even thinking about it.
The rope's been it's down in Jacksonville.
It's Stripe the Stadium. Is that what it is on Thursday night?
They always try to stripe that stadium.
Stripe in the stadium, but I think it's going to be really hard to stripe the stadium with 42,000 allegedly sold tickets is going to be my guess. And I think it'll look a pretty empty striped stadium on national television, Fox Sports 1. Baylor right now averaging this season points per game 37.5. So I'm going to tell you right now, if they're averaging 37.5, they're putting 48 on WVU. And I'll go with you, Scoot, in the sense I think WVU does what they've been doing, which is they'll score 2 or 3 touchdowns in the second half after being down by 4 touchdowns in the first half. And it'll be like 48. I'll go 24 with you. I'll go on that 24. I like it. So
no faith. You've lost all faith, is what you're saying.
My faith went out the door. Well, it was like poking its head out the door.
Did it go with your Jarrett Deggy jersey?
It did go with my Jarrett Deggy
jersey. You said you were going to get one.
It was poking its head out the door during the Virginia Tech game, and then Grant Wells was like, "Oh, just stay inside for a little bit. It's warm. You'll be fine." And then we played Texas, and I'm like, "I'm done. I'm out." Jake, what do you think? Like, I mean, Baylor game.
while you guys were talking, I was just kind of looking things up, and it is amazing to me how similar Baylor is to West Virginia across the board. So, just real quick, Baylor scores 37 a game. We score 38 a game. Total yards, Baylor's 436. We're 454. Baylor's 248 a game passing. We're 268 a game passing. They're 187 a game rushing. We're 186 a game rushing. They allow 223 through the air. We allow 230. They allow 96 on the ground. We allow 100. So across the board, we're the same. And I even went further. Sacks per game, they're 2, we're 2. Turnover margin, they're -1. We're across the board, it's the same. And the one major difference that I could find was Baylor gives the ball away a little bit more, but they take the ball away a little bit more. And the one thing we don't do is generate any sort of takeaways. So I'm feeling Baylor. It's probably a higher scoring game. I think it may be something like 38-31, 38-35. But I've got Baylor in this game just because I think there's a critical turnover somewhere, a fumble, a interception, a tipped pass, something that goes against us because we don't generate anything. We don't do anything to generate turnovers. We don't do anything to generate negative plays, and Baylor does on the whole. I think the other thing that scares me is the one major difference. Baylor gives up 20 points a game. We give up 30. So the difference being across the board, Baylor has a little bit better defense. They are similar in offense, and we are missing our best running back. I've got Baylor.
Yeah, that running back situation is by and large, I think, a big reason why our rushing has been so good. And again, I will say what I said last week. I think we've gotten a little predictable in how we were marshaling out some of those running backs, and this guy gets this series, this guy gets the next series, and then Justin Johnson always gets the third offensive series for whatever reason that is.
Yeah.
It's different without that thunder. You've got lightning, but you don't have that thunder anymore. So it'll be interesting to see how that negates some of our rushing attack.
Well, and CJ Donaldson officially ruled out for this Baylor game. Doesn't help, right? So
right.
I don't know. We'll see. I'm hoping that they find a way, they are not shy about just handing the ball to JT Daniels and saying, hey, you need to just sling it around until we figure something out. I'm hoping he's able to do that on a night game. Maybe find a little magic here, Scoot. No,
for your reputation as a prognosticator, you are hoping that.
Yes. Help me.
Yes. Help you. Jake, thanks so much for being on, man. Thanks. We kept you a little longer than we said we would. We appreciate you hanging out with us as always.
I appreciate it as always, guys.
It's always good to have somebody smarter than us on the show. It's always.
Well, then why are you inviting me?
I'm surprised you guys were able to talk, you and Johnson, aren't you a Braves fan, Jake?
I am a Braves fan.
And Johnson is a newfound Mets fan, so I'm surprised there was no animosity.
The Mets game just went final. They were one hit by the Padres. Feels bad. Feels bad.
Listen, if you get a chance, make sure you check Jake out. He writes for smokingmusket.com. Great place to go read articles. Jake, what do you put out? 2-3 articles a week, right, buddy?
Yeah, something like that. I usually put out something. I usually do a more in-depth game recap, let's call it that. Usually on Sundays, I'll do a Big 12 recap on Sundays. I try to cover Neil's press conference, and if the mood suits me, I will put something that I found interesting or some stat that gave me pause to talk about. The big thing I'm very proud of is I have been doing the uniforms now for several years, and at some point I get them right. And at some point we're going to wear more gold. So
more gold. Hashtag more gold. And also check him out on Twitter at Nightstare. Jake will answer your questions on Twitter. Maybe sometimes a little surly, but he will answer them. So definitely check him out. Guys, thanks for listening this week. We'll be back next week with another show. And don't forget, find us online. Look for us on Instagram and Twitter at Got Your Ears. And also check out our website, gotyourearson.com. Johnson, it's sort of like the hub of everything, right?
Yeah, that's right. We'll post this show in blog form as soon as we're done here. We'll have the link to tune in right on the page. And if you feel compelled to do it, click through to the merch store and get yourself some GYEO merch. It's all right there. GotYourEarsOn.com.
Yeah, check it out. And don't forget, check out WVU this week playing Baylor Thursday night on Fox Sports 1. That's a 7 p.m. kickoff at Milan Puskar Stadium. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll be back next week with another show. You've been listening to Got Your Ears On.